People sometimes say that what we're all seeking is a meaning for life. I'm not sure that's what we're really seeking. I wonder if what we're really seeking is the experience of actually being alive, so that our life experience on a physical plane resonates with our innermost being and reality, so that we actually feel the rapture of being alive.
To that I say, look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty, for yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
Our first reading this morning comes from Clarissa Pincola Estes. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of the soul throws a spark, can send up flares, builds signal fires. The doors to the world of the wild self are few but precious. If you have a deep scar, that is a door. If you have an old story, that is a door. If you love the sky and the water so much you almost cannot bear it, that is a door. If you yearn for a deeper life, a full life, a sane life, that is a door. All that you are seeking is also seeking you. And if you lie still, sit still, it will find you. It has been waiting for you a long time. Our second reading this morning comes from Marion Woodman. It is amazing that our souls, our eternal essences, with all their hopes and dreams and visions of an eternal world, are contained within these temporal bodies. No wonder suffering is part of the human condition. Once we get used to listening to our dreams, our whole body responds like a musical instrument. The more you work with your dreams and your unconscious and honor it, the more you understand it and it understands you. When you develop a relationship with your psyche this way, you begin to carry that energy into life and your relationships.
Well, a month or two ago, Kay Darwin approached me after service and said, "Would you present something for our ARE class?" And before I even really thought about it, I said, "Yeah, I'd love to talk about dreams." And she was all excited and was very thankful, and I was thankful to be asked, and then I realized might have made a mistake. I have been doing dream work for several years, and for me, it's been a very meaningful and profound spiritual practice. But I also realize that it's kind of like yoga. You know, yoga is a wonderful spiritual practice, but I don't do yoga. But there are a lot of people who do, and it means something to them, and it makes their spiritual life something more than it would be otherwise. So I want to say from the beginning that when I talk about dreams as spiritual practice, I'm not here to sell you on the idea of seeking out a dream analyst and taking that on as a spiritual practice. You're welcome to if you want to. That's perfectly fine. But, you know, we're an evangelistic society. We discover something great, and we want everybody to know about it, and then we want them to begin doing it. And then before you know it, we're all in the same boat. And sometimes that boat sinks pretty quick. So what I would like to do today is just share a little bit of my experience, because there are some aspects to this spiritual practice that I think connect all of us and lead us into the same places where we're trying to go in whatever spiritual practice we have, whether it's yoga or meditation or artwork or anything. My sense is that all spiritual practice is trying to match what's going on inside of us with what's going on out in the world, and try to come to some understanding and meaning of that. And so I would like to begin by sharing with you a dream that I had a year or two ago, and then hoping that you will find some points of connection in your own life. Because in the sharing of this dream, it's not just my dream now, it becomes yours. And like it or not, here we are. In the winter of 2012, I had a dream that stayed with me for several days. In this dream, I was walking through my home, but the home in my dream wasn't my actual home, but it was the home I was living in the dream. It was familiar and comfortable and clean and tidy. So I just have to tell you right there, I knew it wasn't my actual home. As I was walking through this house, I began to bump into furniture. And it seemed that the more I walked and tried to make my way through this house, the more and more I kept bumping into furniture. And as I continued to make my way through the house, I suddenly discovered an attic door that I had never seen before. I was amazed that I had been living in this house for so long that I didn't even know it had an attic. So I pulled down the stairs and I climbed them to discover not your usual attic, but a vast room filled with a vaulted ceiling. The room was so big that as I stood at the top of the stairs to take in its enormity, I couldn't see the other end. The attic was more spacious than the house I was living in. And that's the beauty of dreams, because the impossible is made perfectly possible and makes complete sense in a dream. But as I stood there to take it all in, it dawned on me that the attic was meant to be lived in. And with that realization, I was flooded with a sense of freedom and spaciousness and well-being that I have rarely experienced in waking life. And that was the end of the dream. But it stayed with me for a few days, and I was later to learn that this was a fairly common dream that people have that seems to point to kind of a universal collective experience. And I'll just ask you very quickly, by the show of hands, has anyone ever had a dream like that or similar? Oh, okay, good. It's universal in the sense that, you know, those dreams we often have where we show up for school and there's a test and we realize we haven't been there all year, all semester. Hate that dream. Or we dream that we suddenly find ourselves out in a public place and we're naked. I don't mind that one so much. I mind it more now than I used to. In its universal aspect, dreaming of a secret and previously undiscovered room seems to point to some kind of spiritual yearning or awakening, or maybe going to the next level of experience in your psyche or your soul. I think this was true for me, because the dream came to me at a time when my spiritual life felt kind of cluttered and claustrophobic. Just like the downstairs part of the house, in my spiritual life, I felt like I was just bumping into furniture, and I felt kind of claustrophobic, and I was part of an active faith community, but it seemed like I was interested in other spiritual practices and other spiritual ideas and wanted to explore those, but to do so would be like bringing new furniture into a house that was already cluttered, right? There wasn't room for it. I couldn't find a place for these new interests and spiritual practices in my spiritual home then. And to bring them in would not only add to the clutter, but it would clash with the furniture that was already there. And to bring them and make them fit into this overcrowded space of my spiritual life would risk bending them or breaking them or doing some dishonor to these practices. But as I began to work with and reflect on the images of the dream, I gained some clarity around the nature of my impoverished spiritual life. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung believed that dreams are the direct and natural expression of the current condition of the dreamer's mental world. He believed that the nature of dreams is to present a spontaneous and symbolic form of some actual situation that's going on inside of us that's not really conscious. We're not really aware of it. And so we dream. And we dream in images. And the images have meaning. And our job is to tease out that meaning, because dreams don't speak to us in the language that we're used to us. They speak to us in the symbols. That's their language. If we have trouble understanding dreams, it's because the symbolic language is so different from the language of our waking life. They sometimes portray our relation to the external world, our relationship to the people and places and events that are outside in daily life. But at other times, they portray our inner world. And the dream figures are personifications of thoughts and feelings within the dreamer's own imagination. This seemed right to me. It seemed like what I was yearning for was some kind of spaciousness in my spiritual life. And it seemed like what I was stumbling over were, the furniture I was bumping into. Maybe those were the rules and the dogmas and the doctrines of a faith that was not serving me or nourishing my spiritual life. Jung believed that dreams serve two purposes. One is to compensate for the balances in one's life. They bring forward unconscious contents that we've either ignored or repressed or have avoided. For example, if a person is kind of overly intellectual, then their dreams may work to balance out their conscious life by bringing forth images that are more emotional or feeling toned. If we can recognize that in our waking life, then we can work it into our lives in a way that brings greater balance. The other function of dreams is to give us images of the future. This is not to say that dreams are about predicting the future, but merely to suggest where our yearning may be pointed, the direction in which our yearning is pointed, to maybe give us a sense that we should go this way rather than this way. But at the same time, holding the future as being open to what comes. I kind of like that. I don't like making plans, so if my dreams want to take me this way and kind of leave the future open, that's okay with me. But the main function is to kind of bring to light and to unite our waking conscious life with whatever is going on unconsciously within us, to bring that together in a way that's transformative. That's the very personal part of it. There's a collective part of it too, in which our dreams connect us to whatever's going on outside in the world that's kind of beneath the surface, that maybe the world hasn't recognized consciously yet. This was true in Jung's own life when, at the age of 38, he had his dramatic parting of his ways with Sigmund Freud and embarked on a period of about 4 or 5 years where he was having a mental breakdown. This was happening in the early part of the century, 1913 to about 1917. And so a lot of what was going on with his mental breakdown he attributed to the disintegration of his relationship with Sigmund Freud, which was a dramatic event because they had this very intense father-son hero relationship. But at the same time, there were events going on in Europe, for Europe was gearing up for the events surrounding World War I. And so there was a lot going on in the world around him that was feeding into his unconscious life. That's all very fascinating because I feel like we're kind of in the same place in our society today. There's a lot going on in our world that maybe we're not quite aware of, and yet impacts us in ways that we don't quite understand. And so my purpose here today is not to sell you on the idea of doing dream work, but to encourage you to maybe give credence to your dreams and the images in those dreams, and to listen to them and to wonder about them and to consider how they may be not only connected to what's going on in the world, but how they maybe connect us to one another. I love this. I love it when I get ready to call somebody. And it doesn't happen so much with cell phones anymore, but the old-time phones where you'd pick up the phone and somebody was just on the other end and they were calling you. That's kind of the thing that I'm talking about. I love that when that happens because it makes you feel like you're somehow connected by this strand that you don't see. It's like there's this tapestry that's kind of woven that's just beneath the surface of our awareness. And every so often it kind of floats up and we see that we're connected. This happens a lot to me in my work. I have many times had a patient on my mind and I pull up to their house to visit with them only to discover that they had suddenly changed, had a drastic decline, or they might have passed away just moments before. those are sad moments, but at the same time, those are connecting moments because it tells me that somehow, beyond my awareness, I'm connected to something that's beyond me. This to me is the value of dreams. And I worry when we live in a world that places too much emphasis on what we can see and taste and smell and feel, because that's important. But if we ignore the undercurrent of life, then I think sometimes we miss out on the connections that are so crucial, that kind of help us identify with one another and that bind us together as human beings on this planet struggling to live meaningful lives, but lives that are transformative, that go beyond just surviving. I believe that whatever we yearn for is also yearning for us. And whatever we're seeking is also seeking us. And so for me, working with the images of dreams and knowing that there is something beneath the surface that's in my corner, that's rooting for me, that's urging me forward, is hopeful. So this dream with this house, what I realized after working with this dream for several months and beginning to become aware of this impoverished place in my spiritual life, I mentioned to a friend, my life is just, I'm not sure where I'm headed spiritually. I'm not finding any nourishment in where I am, and there's got to be something else out there, but I'm not quite sure what it is. And his response to me was, well, I'm kind of feeling that way too. And we suddenly realized as we talked that we were on kind of parallel spiritual paths, and we were kind of in the same place spiritually. Wouldn't you say? I may have even shared the dream with you.
Maybe you did.
But the realization was that this attic, in the dream, in waking life, we don't live in our attic. No matter what it looks like, we don't live in our attic. We live in the downstairs in the house. But the dream was telling me, no, the attic is where you need to live. The attic is where your spiritual life is. The attic is where the spaciousness is. The attic is where you can bring in spiritual practices, a variety of spiritual practices. The attic is where you can bring them in, and there's enough space where they don't clash and conflict, and you don't bump into the furniture because there is so much space. So the trick is, how do you live in your attic in your waking life? Well, for me, it was driving by Horizon and becoming curious about this Unitarian Universalist church that had the funny artwork out front that looked kind of like a flame coming out of a bowl. And for me, it was saying, I think I'm going to go there one Sunday and just check it out, but I don't want to go by myself. And so we came and checked it out and realized that this is a place, what Unitarian Universalism is about. It's about space. It's about spaciousness. We talk a lot about diversity, and diversity is wonderful, and I love diversity. But we are a spacious church. There's room in our congregation for people of different faiths, for different spiritual practices, and for them to live side by side and together without clashing. And that's wonderful. And to me, that's what this dream was leading me to. And so I felt compelled to share it with you today. Not just to toot the UU horn, we do that pretty good, but to affirm that you are a vibrant and alive congregation and a community of faith that offers the nourishment and the spiritual support that those of us who are seeking can find. Like it or not, you're the attic. But I'm thankful to you. And I'm thankful to this church and the spaciousness that we have here and the room that we can make. My wish for you is that you find your own attic and that you live there lavishly and abundantly, and that you come out of your attic every now and then to help serve a potluck and to, volunteer to, redo a bulletin board or two, or to serve on the board, on the board, or to find that which you are seeking and which you long for, because it's here and it's seeking you too. And that's the good news today. Amen.